there, it's Blake from ChessPathways.com. Let's go ahead and play some more Blitz today. I got my Blitz rating back up to something a bit more respectable, up close to 2200. Let's see if we can break that barrier again today. So we're going to start out here with a French defense, and we'll see how Black wants to respond. Once again, we have that 2-second increment just to make sure there's no crazy time scrambles, and I always have at least a little bit of time to think, and maybe after the game we can go back and talk a little bit about the opening, as well as any critical moments that arise during the game. That's a long time for move 2. 1/6 of his time gone. And finally we get a standard French defense. So we'll see which variation he wants. The Winawer, the classical. Okay, we get a Winawer. All the main lines so far. Okay, Queen G4, and now Black kind of has a choice. Black could castle, Black can play the poison pawn. And against the poison pawn, I like this line that's not too popular, but I think it's actually a very ambitious line for White instead of taking right away. I'll show you the ideas after the game. But if Black takes, you just play knight e2, stop the fork here on c3. And now you can either take back, or, okay, I think if they take there, I think now we can take on g7. I'm just trying to remember all my preparation here. I think it's queen takes g7, rook g8, queen takes h7, queen takes e5, and then pawn to h4, just pushing your passed pawn right away. And Black can get into some trouble if they're greedy and try to take your g2 pawn. Bishop f4 is one idea, as well as simply pushing the passed h-pawn. It's a real threat just to be pushed. Yeah, so this is all still theory. This appears to trap the queen, but I think here the move is bishop to f4. And there's no good way for Black to deal with this. If they take the bishop, of course, we just take the rook. If they play queen f6, then it's bishop g5. And they can't just come back, because then pawn to f4 with the bishop on g5 is actually very strong there for White. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that White has a big advantage in this line, so my opening preparation here paid off. And it's cool because this is a line I've covered with some of my students recently too. Yeah, so they can take here, I take, but now the rook's under attack. Okay, they can try to blockade, but I don't think that blockade is going to last very long. I think I can put the bishop on f6 and just think about playing g4. And this endgame should be very, very good for White, even though I'm down a pawn. Yeah, g4 seems like a pretty serious threat here, and Black's probably going to have to think about some way to sack the exchange, maybe? Black has to turn the table somehow. Probably knight d7 right away could be an idea, or this. Okay, just trying to stop the immediate g4. Maybe here simply knight g3? And then where does the rook go? Maybe to h6? And I'm trying to think there if I could just play maybe just bishop g7, and you probably have to sack the exchange, I think? Because you can't come to g6, you can't come to h7. So if I play here, where does the rook go? If you try to swing out to like b6 or somewhere, I think just h5? And that looks pretty strong to me. You can't really stop me from queening, I don't think. Bishop g7, I control all the squares. Yeah, okay. And h5. And how do you stop me from queening? Maybe knight g8? Knight g8, h6 still wins a piece. If you play e4, always got to look for all your opponent's checks, captures, threats. Shutting out the bishop would be desirable. I'm trying to calculate h5, e4, h6. You can sack the exchange there, possibly, and then take the bishop, huh? I can't really stop e4, though. I think I just have to push this pawn. I probably could have also just taken on e5. I just want to push this pawn as fast as I can, though, I think. e4 could be considered. I'm trying to think if I would play h6 or just take that tempo to save the bishop first. You still can't really stop h6. Knight g8 doesn't work. Knight... Well, okay, that doesn't do anything. I can't even imagine what the idea is. Like, oh, I guess you want to stop bishop b5. I probably could have played that last turn too, but I don't even care about winning the exchange. I just want to queen this pawn. h6. Yeah, and it's pretty amazing in this line. Black just has no way to do anything about this. Okay, we're threatening to make a full queen. Okay. We can win a piece with h8 because we can take the rook with check. Is that the best we can do, though? I'm trying to think about, can we threaten like bishop e2, bishop h5 take and make a queen? I might play this because you have no way to stop us from winning a piece if we want to. We're still threatening h8 and you can't do anything about it. And bishop h5 is also a pretty serious threat, I think. And you can't vacate your back rank fast enough to stop this threat, I'm pretty sure. The rook is totally useless on c6. The bishop has no good squares besides e6, which doesn't do anything. Okay. Oh, I see. You probably want to reinforce the knight, is what you're going for. But nonetheless, bishop h5, if you play knight f8, I think I just take on f8 and you have no answer. Bishop h5. Yeah, but now I take on f8. You can't take with the knight. If you take with the king, then I take your knight. And I finally remove all the defenders. And there we go. Very quick win. So I always love when this happens, when opening preparation pays off. So let's go ahead and hop over here to the analysis board. And we can take a look at what was going on there in the opening. Because I think black was probably, maybe not lost, but definitely much, much worse out of the opening there. Okay, let's do self-analysis. So this is all theory. This is a Winawer French, bishop e4. Black tries to put pressure on the e4 pawn. I push it. c5, the typical strike in this pawn structure. a3, takes. White has the pair of bishops, but black has the better pawn structure. Knight e7, and it's very typical to play queen g4 in this line, going after this pawn, pointing out that the bishop is missing. And now black has a few options. Black sometimes plays what they did in the game. They play queen c7, willing to sacrifice this pawn to get a bunch of play on the queen side. Sometimes black can castle, but then they're kind of castling right into our attack. Or black has even played king f8, trying to kind of avoid both of these options, just defend the g7 pawn. But of course, that always has its own downsides. But in the game, black played queen c7, probably their most popular choice, the poison pawn variation. And there's the whole main line where, you take on g7, rook g8, you take, they take. They're threatening queen c3 with a fork, so you can't take back. And I haven't played this in so long, I'm trying to remember how the line even goes. I guess you have to play here knight e2, and then I think it's knight c6, f4. And there's a whole line that goes something like this. There's lines where black can try to sacrifice more material. But I think this sideline of not taking on g7 right away and playing this move bishop d3 is actually a very ambitious way to play against this, as we just saw. The point is, because in the main line knight e2 is forced, blocking in your bishop, it's very hard for white to complete their kingside development. So you can just develop this bishop, and you're still threatening g7. And now, if you play knight e2, the bishop's not blocked in. And of course, black could go for something else here. Black could try to gain this tempo on your bishop, for example, but now they're not going to get any of their typical queenside play down the file, right? You can just back up, they can defend their g7 pawn, and now it's a much more closed position here in the center, and you can just slowly build up for a kingside attack, especially if black castles kingside. So if they do take on d4, which is much more in the spirit of this whole, so-called poison pawn variation, they're still threatening queen c3, so you still have to play knight e2, but the bishop's not blocked in now. And now I think black has a couple options. If black was to capture with the queen right away, then I think we play c takes d4 and straighten out those pawns. And if they take on c3 to stop us from fixing those pawns, now we can take on g7, rook g8, queen h7, queen e5, and the key move is h4. And this is one of the big main lines of my preparation here in this poison pawn line. And if memory serves, I'm pretty sure black almost has to play knight d7 here. I'm actually curious to check with the database. Okay, rook takes g2 has been tried, but I know there's some pretty big downsides there. For example, with bishop g5, just kind of cutting off the rook's access to the back rank, and potentially thinking about trapping this rook after king f1 or something, followed by rook e1 and all the pieces get into the game. So I thought knight d7 was the move. I knew this rook h8 idea was wrong, and it's so tempting for black if they don't know this line, especially in a blitz game, because it looks like it almost traps the queen. But I knew the idea here. You just play bishop f4, which was one of your ideas anyways, and black has no good answer. If the queens come off, the endgame is super good for white, as we just saw. The h-pawn is so strong. And there's no real way out of this. Like I said, if queen f6, trying to maintain this trapped queen, simply bishop g5, and if the queen comes back, we don't have to repeat, we have pawn to f4. And black is kind of out of good options here. The queen can't defend the rook, so black has to exchange. And now we're just going to play bishop f6 and run the h-pawn like we saw. And like I said, it's pretty cool that I got to play that line, because this is a line that I've worked with some of my students in the Elite Openings Workshop program on, where I work with students one-on-one over the course of many months to help them design, build, and then iterate upon a master-level opening repertoire. And if you're interested in that, I'll go ahead and put a link down in the description. You can book a call with me, see if it's a good fit, and maybe I could work with you too. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please make sure if you haven't already that you visit chesspathways.com, get signed up there. It's totally free, only takes about 5 seconds, and I will send you a free move-by-move guide to chess thinking when you sign up. And as well, please click that link down in the description if you'd like to book a call. Thanks, and I will talk to you all soon.